They vanished. For over 3,000 years, not a single person remembered their name. Before Rome, before Greece, there was a people of iron and empire. Then they disappeared. But who were they? And how did they vanish from the memory of mankind? Memory erased, a civilization unknown. What if I told you that we once erased an empire more powerful than Babylon, and no one noticed? Not conquered, not forgotten, erased, as if they never existed, by us. You've heard of the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, but the Hittites? Not once. Not in your textbooks, not in your movies. Why? They ruled over 40 city-states, invented laws we still echo today, fought Egypt to a draw, and forged the world's first international peace treaty. So why did the ancient world burn their name from history? Maybe because the Hittites knew something they weren't supposed to. When their queen, Puduhepa, sent a letter to Ramses II asking for a political marriage, it wasn't diplomacy, it was desperation. Her son had just died mysteriously after negotiating with Egypt. The Hittite king blamed Egypt for murder. What followed was a plague so devastating, it wiped out 3 generations of Hittite rulers. Sound familiar? Was this the world's first act of biological warfare? Or something darker buried in ancient silence? Why do you think the Hittites were erased? Was it their technology, their gods, or something modern historians don't want to talk about? Comment your theory. The answers may rewrite what we think we know about ancient history. And yet, amid the ruins of their empire, archaeologists found something so strange it's still not fully deciphered. A language that may not be human. Rise of the Hittites. What if the very foundation of civilization wasn't built on conquest, but on survival? What if a single king forged an empire from nothing, not through bloodshed, but through sheer will? The Hittites were the masters of order, yet their rise was nothing less than a rebellion against chaos itself. The year is 1650 BCE. In the heart of Anatolia, there is no kingdom, only scattered tribes and blood feuds. The land is in turmoil, with no king strong enough to unify the region. But in the chaos, a new force is emerging, a man destined to challenge the anarchy. His name is Hattusili I, a tribal leader with fire in his veins. His vision is simple: unite the warring peoples of Anatolia under a single banner. The question is, how? We will build something that cannot be destroyed, a place so strong that even the gods will fear it. Hattusili's first conquest wasn't a city, it wasn't an army, it was a dream. In 1650 BCE, he chose a valley surrounded by jagged mountains, a place that was said to be cursed. No one dared to live there. It would become the heart of his new kingdom, Hattusa. But to build a kingdom, Hattusili needed more than stone. He needed order, and he knew that power only lasts when it is under control. And so, in a dark corner of the valley, under moonlight, the very foundations of Hattusa were laid, brick by brick, law by law. Behind its massive stone walls, secret tunnels ran beneath the city, designed to protect the king in times of siege. The famous stone lions that guard the gates to this day were not just symbols of strength. They were threats to anyone who dared to challenge the law. The stone lions? They represent the Hittite mindset. They were guardians, but more importantly, they were messages to enemies. Cross this line, and you'll face a force you can't defeat. As the city grew, so did Hattusili's vision of order. The law would be the heartbeat of his empire. The Edict of Telepinu would lay the foundation for one of the earliest recorded legal systems in history, aimed at unifying his fractured realm. No longer would the Hittite people be ruled by the whims of warlords or tribal chiefs. Hattusili, through this monumental document, decreed that anyone who broke the law, whether a commoner or noble, would face the same punishment. Equality under the law became his creed. This was no mere peace treaty. This was the declaration of a new era, a new civilization built on order rather than chaos. But the law would not protect them from the greatest challenge yet, a rival empire led by a man just as powerful and unpredictable as Hattusili, Ramses II of Egypt. By 1274 BCE, the Hittites under King Muwatalli II were facing their greatest challenge. To the south, Egypt was an unstoppable force under the mighty Ramses II. The battle at Kadesh would go down in history as the first major military clash between two titans of the ancient world. The two armies clashed in the world's first known battle of chariots. But the true twist? Neither side truly won. Instead, after months of conflict, both Ramses II and Muwatalli II signed the first international peace treaty in history, a treaty that would last over a century. This wasn't just a victory for diplomacy. It was the validation of everything Hattusili had envisioned, a kingdom built on stability, law, and the balance of power. Hattusa wasn't just surviving anymore. It was now the center of the known world. But as the peace settled, something deeper was happening, something darker. An empire built on chaos was quietly disintegrating. The Hittites had fought wars, built laws, and forged alliances. But there was one thing they couldn't control: the gods themselves. In the next chapter, we uncover the secret weapon the Hittites used to dominate the ancient world, and the unspeakable price they paid for it. What caused their empire to crumble from within? The answer lies beneath the surface, and it's buried in fire and ash. If you're enjoying this journey into the forgotten past, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification so you won't miss the rest of this mind-blowing series. We've only scratched the surface. Stay with us as we uncover what really happened to the Hittites. Why did they vanish from history? The answer is darker and more unexpected than you could imagine. The Empire of Iron and Gods. What if the most advanced empire of its time vanished without a trace? An empire that controlled iron, ruled gods, and wielded power not with might alone, but with ideas that were centuries ahead of their time. What happened to them? And why was history erased their memory? In the 14th century BCE, the Hittite Empire was a colossus, stretching from Anatolia to the Levant. They weren't just warriors. They were innovators, rulers of a multi-ethnic empire bound by an intricate system of laws and ancient bureaucracy. But when the Hittites vanished, they took their secrets with them. No one knew they had existed for over 2 millennia until a mistaken history revealed the truth. You might ask, how can an entire empire vanish without a trace? Did they just disappear, or was it something more insidious? Forget the image of the barbaric conqueror. The Hittites were not just a military empire. They were masters of administration, operating with a level of bureaucratic precision that was unheard of for its time. Think about it. Taxes, military orders, legal codes, and diplomatic correspondence, all preserved in stone. But here's the twist. When the Hittites collapsed, so did the archives. What really happened to them? Was there something more dangerous behind the disappearance of their bureaucratic system? Could the failure of their records have been the undoing of an empire that once thought it could last forever? Or was there something more terrifying waiting in the shadows? They worshiped 1,000 gods, each with a shifting role, each demanding worship, tribute, and obedience. Gods who didn't just control nature, but the very structure of power itself. Yet there was a hidden god, one whose name was whispered but rarely spoken. Teshub, storm god, warrior, or something more? What secret did this god hold, and what power did it wield over the Hittite kings? Could their gods have been the key to the Hittites' unseen destruction? Did Teshub's growing influence unravel everything, turning divine favor into a curse? You've heard of mighty kings, but what if the real power behind the throne wasn't a king at all? Queen Puduhepa, wife of King Hattusili III, didn't just sit idly by. She corresponded directly with Pharaoh Ramses II, and her political decisions shaped the empire. She was more than a ruler, she was a force that commanded the very fate of the empire. But here's the shocking part. Puduhepa wasn't the only queen with such power. How much of the Hittite Empire was actually shaped by women? What does this tell us about the real inner workings of an empire that history forgot to remember? In a world where bronze ruled, the Hittites broke the mold. Iron. They wielded the world's first iron tools, a technological leap that changed everything. But it wasn't just about weapons. The Hittites mastered iron agriculture tools, tools that transformed farming and warfare. Yet why didn't anyone notice this at the time? Why didn't they use this new weapon to safeguard themselves from the coming chaos? The Hittites were ahead of their time, but were they so obsessed with control that they couldn't see the very danger growing within? Did their mastery of iron lead to their own undoing? Now the question you must ask yourself, did the Hittites' own obsession with order, with divine control, iron innovation, and bureaucratic power actually set them up for failure? Was it their inability to adapt, to evolve, that led to their shocking disappearance? In the next chapter, we dive into the real cause of the Hittite collapse. Was it the sea people? Or something far worse? Something that even the gods couldn't stop? Don't miss it. Collapse in oblivion. The Hittites didn't just collapse. They made themselves disappear. In the last years of the Hittite Empire, the clay tablets grow frantic. There are no victories, only prayers. One letter, buried in the Bogoskoi archives, simply reads, "The grain does not grow. The enemy surrounds us. We do not know what the gods want anymore." Then, nothing. No kings, no scribes, no war epics, just absence. What empire leaves no farewell? Everyone blames the sea peoples. But here's the question scholars don't like to ask. Why did the Hittite kings stop responding to Egyptian diplomats years before the invasions began? One Egyptian tablet reveals Pharaoh Ramesses III sent messengers north. None returned. Were the Hittites already dead or hiding something? There's zero archaeological evidence of battle in Hadassa. No mass graves, no final stand. Just a city quietly abandoned and systematically burned. In 1190 BCE, the great temple of Hattusa was torched, but carefully, selectively. Tablets on astronomy survived. Royal genealogies gone. And what's more disturbing, temples across Anatolia follow the same pattern. This wasn't looting, it was ritual deletion. Did the Hittites erase themselves? We often think of empire collapse as chaos, but what if it was intentional, a vanishing act worthy of myth? In northern Syria, inscriptions speak of a queen from the north who arrived with sacred Hittite relics. In Cyprus, late Bronze Age temples suddenly adopt Hittite-style rituals. Did Hittite elites flee? Did they plant their culture in new lands under new names? The mysterious kingdom of Carchemish, once a Hittite outpost, rises just after the empire vanishes and speaks the same language. Did the Hittites fake their death to survive in the shadows? History remembers what it's allowed to, and for 3,000 years the Hittites were not allowed to exist. Even the Bible thought they were mythical, until archaeologists unearthed their truth. Their destruction was so complete, so absolute, that for centuries scholars doubted they were ever real. That's not collapse. That's censorship. If the Hittites were erased so perfectly, how many other civilizations have we forgotten entirely? And worse, how many are we erasing right now? They didn't vanish. We deleted them. For 2,000 years, Western historians believed the Hittites were fictional, an invented enemy, a biblical ghost. Why? Because they didn't fit the story Europe wanted to tell. Then came the 1830s. A French explorer stumbled on massive city walls in Anatolia. Lion gates, temple altars, and strange cuneiform no one could read. But even after the ruins were discovered, scholars still refused to believe. Why? Because their maps of the ancient world didn't have room for another superpower. What if your history textbooks are missing entire empires? On purpose. 1915. A Czech linguist, Bedřich Hrozný, cracked the code. You will eat bread, you will drink water. The Hittite language was Indo-European. That made them not just real, but related to us. A branch of the same linguistic tree as English, Latin, Sanskrit. That discovery broke every assumption about where Western civilization came from. Yet most history classes never mention it. Why? Because it means the foundation of European identity might not be Greece or Rome, but a forgotten mountain people from central Turkey. If your cultural origin story changed, who would you become? They didn't just find walls and stones. They found 30,000 tablets in a buried archive. First, international treaties with pharaohs. Second, legal reforms that predate Roman law. Third, love poems, rituals, war dispatches. Fourth, letters signed by a woman, Puduhepa, queen and priestess, negotiating with Egypt. And still, school books don't include her. We remember Cleopatra. Why not Puduhepa? Hittite queens had diplomatic power 3,000 years ago, but 20th century scholars called them consorts to protect a Roman narrative. The deeper you dig, the more unnerving it becomes. 1. Magnetized stones in Hattusa's gates. Function? Unknown. Second, identical laws found later in Greek city-states. Coincidence? Third, gods with multiple names and faces. A theology built to absorb foreign faiths, centuries before the Persians or Romans. But here's the twist. Every major discovery was downgraded, dismissed, or delayed in academic circles. Why? Because acknowledging the Hittites meant rewriting the Western canon, and that meant surrendering control over the story of civilization. What if we only remember the past that flatters us? Today, tourists walk through the ruins of Hattusa with no idea what they're standing on. A little girl runs her hand across the Lion Gate. She doesn't know this city once rivaled Ramses, that queens here wrote laws, that her ancestors, maybe, spoke this empire's language. And somewhere in a museum basement, a sealed box of untranslated Hittite tablets waits. No one funds their study, because no one cares about ghosts that don't fit the script. What other myths do you think are actually real, just buried under silence? If the Hittites were erased for 3,000 years, how would we know if someone's erasing us right now? Some empires leave ruins. Others leave echoes. Memory is a weapon. They forged the world's first peace treaty, then vanished. They bent iron before iron was history. They mapped the sky, sealed laws in stone, spoke to 1,000 gods, and we forgot their name. Their names survived only in a book that scholars dismissed as myth. Their empire was so forgotten, not even their enemies remembered them. You're taught about Rome, about Egypt, even Babylon, but not the Hittites. Why? Because what we remember is what power allows us to remember. If a civilization with gods, iron, and law could be erased, what makes you think yours is safe? Do you think modern empires will be remembered 3,000 years from now? Or will our stories be buried too? Comment the one nation you think will vanish first and why. If the Hittites, masters of iron, law, and empire, could be deleted from history, what else have we lost? This isn't just a documentary, it's a resurrection. So if you're still watching, you've already chosen to remember what the world forgot. Subscribe now because the next episode uncovers the queens who ruled behind thrones and rewrote history without a sword. Which empire do you think we're forgetting right now, while it's still alive? And don't just watch, binge the lost blueprints of civilization.